Hey y'all, Jamie here with Country Diggers. How many of y'all have heard about Nancy Hart? How many of y'all have heard about the Nancy Harts? How many of y'all have heard about the Nancy Hart rifles? How many of y'all have heard about the Coalition Brigade? Well, we're going to talk about that today. And I will be reading from Francis Tavern's Museum.org, The Legend of Nancy Hart, a Revolutionary Woman by Jessica Bryant, and also History.com, an all-woman Confederate militia guarded their Georgia hometown by Erin Blakemore. So stay tuned. All right, first we'll read about the woman Nancy Hart. Among the legendary figures of the American Revolution, there is another person, a woman, who stands out from the rest, Nancy Hart. Nancy Hart was born Anne Morgan around 1747 in either Pennsylvania or North Carolina. She was called Nancy, a nickname for Anne. Not much of her early life is known. She was described as a 6-foot-tall, red-headed, muscular woman known for her bravery. She married Benjamin Hart in 1771, and the pair moved to Wilkes County, Georgia. In Georgia, Nancy quickly developed a reputation for being a strong patriot and a savvy frontierswoman. Nancy couldn't read or write, but she was a skilled herbalist, an excellent hunter, a skilled markswoman, despite being cross-eyed, and was above all a fiercely brave, strong, and independent woman. Legend has it that members of the Cherokee tribe referred to her as Watek, W-A-T-A-C-H-E. I know I'm not probably saying it right, but I looked it up on Google to see how to pronounce it, and it gave me, instead of spelling it like W-A-T-A-C-H-E, it spelled it W-A-S-A-T-C-H, and I don't think that's the word for it. Anyway, the title, the Cherokee referred to her as Watek, W-A-T-A-C-H-E, a title that roughly translates to war woman. Allegedly, Nancy served as the head of her household, not her husband, and raised 8 children. Because of Nancy's reputation, British soldiers often kept close watch over her cabin. On one occasion, a soldier was spying on her and her children while they were making soap. Nancy's daughter saw an eye looking at her through a hole in the wall, and immediately Nancy threw a ladle full of scalding soap water through the hole, burning the British soldier's eye. Nancy is the center of many legends like this from the Revolutionary era. Perhaps the most famous of these was based on an encounter with a group of British soldiers. The story states that British soldiers entered the Hart property looking for a local patriot leader who they had been pursuing. When they knocked on her door, Nancy refused to give them any information, insisting that she had not seen anyone on the property in several days. Convinced that she was lying, the soldiers went out and slaughtered the last turkey on the Hart property, barged into her house, and demanded that Nancy cook it for them. As the soldiers made themselves comfortable, Nancy served them plenty of corn liquor, getting them drunk enough that they would not notice her sneaking their weapons outside of the house each time she walked by them. Then Nancy's daughter, Sukey, I guess it's Sukey, S-U-K-E-Y, snuck outside and used a conch shell to alert the neighbors that they needed assistance. When the British soldiers caught Nancy moving their muskets and threatened her, she turned the weapon on them. The soldiers ignored her warning, so Nancy shot and killed the first to approach her. Nancy and her daughter held the remaining soldiers at gunpoint, which is how their neighbors found them. The rest of the soldiers were hanged on a nearby tree. While this story is steeped in legend, it was given credence in 1912 by the discovery of 6 bodies on the Hart property. The skeletons were buried 3 feet underground and had been there for at least a century. Following the Revolution, Nancy lived with her husband in Georgia until her death in 1830. Nancy has been honored by the Daughters of the Revolution, who erected a replica of the Hart's famous Georgia cabin using some of the original stones. Her legacy has endured through time because of her spirit, bravery, unwavering loyalty. Loyalty she had to the patriot cause, and most of all because of her willingness to protect herself and her family. That is the real woman, Nancy Hart. Now we move to the Nancy Harts. An all-woman Confederate militia guarded their Georgia hometown. A band of 40 self-trained female Confederate rebels were ready for battle, and in 1865 they got their chance. Like countless other women of the Civil War, the wives, sisters, and sweethearts of LaGrange, Georgia, watched the majority of men in their town march away to military service in 1861. But while the other Confederate women on the home front prepared to nurse the wounded and wait out the war, the women of LaGrange prepared to do battle. Between 1861 and 1865, a group of 40 LaGrange women organized an all-woman militia, the Nancy Harts, and they took this name from the original Nancy Hart. Okay, and between 1861 and 1865, a group of 40 LaGrange women organized an all-woman militia, the Nancy Harts, organized in military formations and skilled in marksmanship and battle tactics. The women were prepared to defend their town against a Union incursion, and near the end of the war, they did. 1,300 men left LaGrange during the first year of the war, and the town, which was located in a strategic important spot halfway between Atlanta and Montgomery, Alabama, between a vulnerable target due to its location, became a vulnerable target due to its location, and its rail lines, which continued to operate throughout the war. The women of LaGrange and their departing husbands worried that should the town be attacked, the boys and old men who remained wouldn't be able to hold Union soldiers at bay. So Nancy Hill Morgan, the wife of a departing officer, suggested that the women form their own militia to defend their town. When did you hear of a military company of women? Hart's friend Mary Hurd reportedly responded, but soon Hurd was at Hart's side to organize a group of women soldiers to fend off Union troops. They took their name from another woman warrior, Anne Morgan Nancy Hart. During the Revolutionary War, Hart, who lived in the then frontier town of Georgia, fought against British loyalists. It's unclear how many of her reported exploits actually happened in real life, but she was reported to have killed at least one loyalist, captured others, and spent years resisting them. She also served as a spy and is thought to have fought at the Battle of Kettle Creek in 1779. As historian John Thomas Scott notes, Hart's memory was cherished in the South. By the time of the Civil War, he writes, the name Nancy Hart seems to have been accepted in Georgia as symbolic of women willing to defend hearth and home against oppressive foreign invaders. We could use some Nancy Harts these days. Hart and Herd's Militia consisted largely of their former classmates and their sisters. Armed with a copy of William Hardy's Rifle and Light Infantry Tactics, the assistance of a local man who couldn't fight due to a disability, and the often outdated weapons the men had left behind, they began teaching themselves to drill like real infantry regiment. They assigned members ranks and duties, using muskets, pistols, and other weapons. They drilled twice a week and slowly began to improve their marksmanship and military organization. The women continued to train as the war progressed, even though they doubted they'd ever see action. In the meantime, they served as nurses for the wounded and sick from nearby battles. But even as they tended to the wounded, the Nancy Harts kept up their training and marched through the streets of LaGrange. It looked like the Nancy Harts would get through the entire war without firing a shot at Union soldiers. But that changed in April 1865 when Union troops raided West Georgia, destroying manufacturing facilities in a swoop they called Wilson's Raid, after commanding officer Brigadier General James H. Wilson. A Confederate officer telegraphed LaGrange to tell them that the nearby town of West Point was under siege. A few men remained in LaGrange. The few men who remained in LaGrange marched away to help defend it, and the Nancy Harts prepared for battle. The women stepped into the familiar formation and marched to the campus of the LaGrange Female College, which was located on the edge of town. As civilians and the remaining Confederate cavalrymen fled, 40 Nancy Harts stood in a group waiting to fight. The fleeing men begged them to hide, but they refused. Soon a column of 3,000 Federal troops approached, and the Nancys noticed several of their family members among the prisoners that came with them. Union Colonel Oscar LaGrange, unrelated to the town, approached and asked to speak to the militia's captain. When Morgan complied, she told him that they were willing not to engage in battle if the colonel would promise not to plunder the town. LaGrange complimented Morgan on her well-trained troops and agreed not to attack homes or civilians. She handed over the town to the attacking soldiers. As LaGrange went back to his soldiers to give orders to take over the town, he was overheard saying, "The Nancy Harts could probably use their eyes with better effect than their old guns." The Union soldiers stayed true to their word and did not attack homes or civilians. They did, however, destroy local warehouses, rail lines, and other strategic targets, and looted local stores. The town's residents were spared, though, and in gratitude, the Nancy Harts cooked dinner for LaGrange. For the town, the Nancy Harts truce was considered a victory. The women had protected LaGrange without firing a shot, and the war was over. The group disbanded, and the women went back to their everyday lives, as everyday as life could be in a town that had lost a quarter of its men. Like other upper-class white Southern women, the Nancy Harts were bound by strict codes of femininity, and their use of guns and military maneuvers would have been unthinkable outside the context of the war. The remaining accounts of the women show that they enjoyed their drills, and the chance to socialize and develop new skills. But when women like Morgan talked about their military service, they emphasized how dainty and womanly they remained, even while toting muskets and pistols. In feminine dress of ruffled skirts and flowered and feathered heats, their hearts beat in unison, Morgan recalled. The Nancy Harts weren't the only women who trained for battle during the Civil War. Women in girls' schools in the region also trained for battle, but the Nancys were unusual in that they not only remained prepared throughout the entire war, but that they actually met Union troops. They were never called to field duty, it is true, Morgan later recalled, but they stood ever in readiness and rendered a service equally effective as guards over the defenseless and their homes. Well, we could use some Nancy Harts these days for sure. I'm surprised that their memorial hasn't got tore up, but anyway, that was the real Nancy Hart and the Nancy Harts during the Civil War. Hope y'all enjoyed. See you back soon.